Welcome to Hagan Street Rods. I'm Pete Hagan. Today we're going to be showing you how to install Hagan's Suicide Hinge System on an S10. If you're doing this project for the first time, you may have a few questions like, how long does it take and how difficult's the project? Well, to answer these questions, let's go to door mount pockets. The hinges have GM-style flanged oilite bushings. And unique to the Hagan hinge system is the adjustable spring-loaded ball stops. So how long should this project take? Well, if you're a trained professional, you want to bid the job at about 20 hours. That's going to include installing the hinges, the latches, but would not include installing any linkage, electronics, or even closing up the holes to prepare the project for paint. So if you're ready, let's learn how it's done. Step 1. Disassembling the door. You'll need to remove all of the interior upholstery panels, hardware, the door glass, including the door regulator, any hardware that's on the inside of the door, including the latches. Now pull the door pins and remove the door. Some vehicles, the hinges will be welded on and they'll have to be cut off. Otherwise, just unbolt them. If there's some areas that need to be welded up, you'll need to do that also. Later in the video, we'll be showing you how to do the filler panel on the inside of the front fender. Step 2. Installing temporary mount tabs. The tabs will be welded onto the body and also onto the door. These tabs will allow you to quickly remove the door and put the door back in place, having it perfectly indexed while you're doing the work. Clean away the paint and primer and weld the tab on the B-pillar. Tack it in place first and then weld on the underside of the tab. You do not want to weld across the top of this tab because that weld would interfere with the alignment of the door. Weld the short side of the tab to the body, and when you go to weld the tabs on the door, you'll be welding the long side of the tab. Now place the door back on the car and tape it in place. Make sure all of your body lines are in proper alignment. You'll be welding the long side of the tab onto the door, and the door tab also lays across the top of the tabs that you have welded to the body. You'll want to radius the corners of your tabs so not to catch your clothing while you're doing the work in aligning the doors. Notice the position of the tabs here. Now these tabs are going to allow you to quickly remove the door and put the door back on, instantly realigning the door. Step 3. Installing the hinge receivers. Your receiver tubes are going to be welded into your B-pillars. You'll have to position them and try to keep them as far apart as possible. If you have any other interior panels in the way, go ahead and remove them at this time so you have access to the inside of the B-pillar. When you position the receiver tubes, keep in mind that the hinge arms must stay to the inside of the window channels. Top receiver will be around door handle height. We've positioned it and now we're scribing around the receiver tube. We'll take a straight edge and carry that outside line down the jamb to position the bottom receiver tube, keeping it parallel with the top. You can refer to your quick reference guide for some other critical dimensions that are outlined on that instruction sheet. The receiver tubes are radiused at the corners, so we're going to use a step unibit to drill out the corners in the B-pillar. Now use a cutoff wheel or a saw to remove the rest of the material. Once you have the opening cut, slip your hinge and receiver into position and check the fit. There may be some things on the inside, some support brackets and so forth that are still in the way, and you'll need to cut them out and give you the proper clearance to fit the receiver. Now on this vehicle, the B-pillar was pretty thin, so we're going to take some 16 gauge material and weld it to the inside to strengthen the area where the receiver will be welded in place. Now before we tack the receivers in, we want to put the door back on and see how everything is lining up. You'll see here that the hinge arms are laying right across the inside of the door. That's what we want. See how the door mount tabs hold the door out about the thickness of the hinge arm. On the inside, you'll see here that we've had to cut away a little bit of the inner brace to allow clearance for the receiver tube, and you have to make sure you have clearance for the hinge pin to be removed. Let's take a look at the hinges. Two of the hinges have the spring-loaded ball stop, and they're a mirror image of one another. Two of them do not have it. Now this ball stop is adjustable, so you can set it to match the weight of the door by turning the set screw in the top of the sleeve. This one also has the hole for the door stop pin, which is set at 65 degrees. The ball stop receiver can be put on the top hinge or the bottom. You just have to make sure that you have the proper clearance to have access to it. Now before you weld the receivers in, you want to tack the nuts for the door hinge pin. Make sure that you have the pin going in the right direction and you have access to remove it. With proper clearance for your ball stop and your hinge pins, you're ready to tack weld the receivers in place. Tack weld the receiver in just one corner on both the top and the bottom receiver. Now take a straight edge and lay it across the side of the receiver tubes. They have to be perfectly lined up, both on one side and on the face of the receiver tubes. If you can't get to the front of the receiver tubes, you may have to do this on the inside. If your receivers protrude a little bit, trim them back to where they're flush with the pillar. As a final check for alignment, we'll clamp a piece of angle iron to both hinge arms. With the pins in proper alignment to one another, the arms will swing together freely. At this point, you're ready to go ahead and finish the welding of the receiver tubes. We've dressed the welds with a grinder and it's ready for filler and primer work. Now weld some brackets on the back of the receiver tube, tying them to the back of the B-pillar. This will eliminate any flex in the receiver tube. You're ready to install the hinge arms and the hinge pins. Place the door back on the car and secure it in place with a couple of vice grips on your temporary mount tabs. Step 4. Installing the door mount pockets.